Okay.
Okay.
We're going to hope that we can be heard and seen. Okay, so I guess I'll start out with Ariana. I know this is our first observation this semester. So how did you feel the lesson went?
I think for the most part it was good. I had a lot of participation, which is pretty normal for this group. I think that the turn and talk went well. They work well with their partners. I think they got a little confused when it came to the point of writing their own questions. A lot of them chose to just write like words that were on the board or words out of their book. I don't think they really understood that they were supposed to write their own questions. So if I was going to do it again, I would go over that a little bit better with them. And then the ones who did answer their questions answered them well. However, if they didn't write a question, then they didn't really have a chance to answer it. So I know this week we're still doing Stella Luna, so it might be something that we can revisit tomorrow or towards later in the week. But for the most part, other than that, I think it went well. I had some behaviors, but that's normal for this group, so it's not nearly as chaotic as it could be.
If you had to identify what was something you would change, what was the one thing you would definitely change, or maybe a challenge that you felt you had?
I think one thing I would definitely change is like just the explanation or the instruction of their worksheet. I think that needed they needed a little more clarification. And then I guess a challenge is we're still working on getting them to not call out and to focus, and I had a lot of friends in the front who call out and talk to their partner when they're not supposed to be, and so really it's just kind of trying to teach through that, and because I can't stop every 5 seconds to say, okay, we're not talking. Like, the best I can do is just remind them a couple times, move clips, and then we'll discuss it later. But
perfect, yeah, because if you do a lot of interrupting, it kind of messes with the flow of the lesson.
Right.
But I do know, just to go off of that, I do know there were certain times where you did stop and refocused them, reminded them of the rules.
Right.
Which you need to do, because you're right. There's sometimes you can, move a clip. There's sometimes you can, go stand by that student, or give, little warnings. But it's good to recognize when there's certain times where you just need to stop everything and say, all right, let's remember using our inside voice and so forth. And so some of the things that I wrote down, looking at our observation form, first starting with the lesson plan, I thought you had it well sequenced. I thought it was appropriate.
Okay.
I think you did again, because it naturally brings in those connections to science.
Right.
How are birds and bats similar? How are they different? You did, pick out appropriate standards that were addressed on comprehension and specific details, which is what you were looking for when you had that chart with the different questions. I like how you use the Elmo to project the book as well as the worksheet. You also had an anchor chart where you guys made predictions. I thought that was good. When it comes to the multi-sensory aspects, you did, obviously there was visual. They had the book in front of them. You had it projected, the book. You also had the worksheet projected, the auditory, by you reading aloud to them. Tactile, they were using their finger to point. And I noticed that almost all of them were doing that. The only thing is, the kinesthetic, I'm trying to think what way we could have added the kinesthetic.
Right.
And that one could be a little more challenging, because that's something we have to get them up and moving. Now, I do know there were points where students did get up, not during the reading of the story, but they came up to the chart to look at some of the words and how to spell them.
Yeah, we're working on not only like, because a lot of it is how do you spell this, how do you spell that, and we're trying to work with them on just like sound out your words. They don't have to be completely correct, just as long as we're trying. And we are telling them, you know, if I have it written on the board, you're more than welcome to walk up to the board and look at it when we're not in the middle of teaching, or however they need to do it. So we're working on those routines with them.
And I thought too, kind of what you said too, your challenge is the development of a question. Of course, we know they always ask a lot of questions, but I thought maybe, you know, after when you're introducing the worksheet, is maybe model and do one together, and maybe go back to your chart where they had identified some questions, and I think if you had done at least one practice one together, that probably would have helped.
Well,
Not all of them.
Usually that is something that I do, and that I watch Laura do all the time, and so I'm used to, especially with them doing it. And I think today it was just so many parts that I was like, oh. And so as soon as I was done, I was like, I should have practiced the question with them. I should have like wrote it down.
Right, and we know sometimes, especially when you're being observed, you know, it does have an effect. But I thought too is really emphasizing too as well as writing one together is really focused. What should a question word begin with? That who, it should begin with a what or when. And so I think, you know, there were some that were able to do it, and then some that were struggling, that you noticed as well when you were walking around and assisting. But for the most part, I do think they were engaged. They really liked the story. They were following along. You do have a very diverse classroom, and so you were calling on all students. You were helping all students. And so I thought, you know, there was, you know, you were showing respect to them. I also, you know, I thought you had a very positive demeanor towards students. You didn't ever get angry or raise your voice. You always spoke, you know, calm, patient. I thought you supported them, especially when they had questions. You walked around and circulated, had some one-on-one discussions. You kneeled to get down at their level. So I thought that was all a good thing. But you also, you know, even though you know some of the students, it was a struggle, you presented it and with an attitude that I know you can all do this. So I think you conveyed those expectations. I did, you know, talked about current and emerging assistive technologies. I noticed that some students, because I know you have some behavioral challenges with headphones. And so the girl with the headphones, explain that.
So we decided earlier today that if we, especially with the day we had yesterday, that students who are a couple of our behavior students who were having a hard time, we're going to, if they couldn't handle it, we were just going to stick them on Smarty Ants for the day and try again. Usually they just need like a break, and doing Smarty Ants helps them do that. So I think originally she pulled Peyton and put her out there, and then we pulled Addison. And then I noticed the DJ up at the front, I did move his clip once, and then he decided to continue to like kick his crate under his table. So I moved his clip again and moved the crate away from him, and then he decided to dig in it. So I just told him, I was like, okay, take your headphones, go do Smarty Ants. And then after being out there for a while, he chose to now go back and like be part of his small group sips time. And so I think a lot of it is they just need like a little bit of a break. And so if they need it, then we try to get them what we can when we can. So.
Well, especially at this young age, their attention spans vary. And so at least you guys have a strategy so it doesn't disrupt the entire class and stop all learning.
And at least they're still learning. They're still, it's not just, okay, go sit at the calm down desk and stare at the wall. It's, okay, you are going to do smarty ants. You are still practicing your reading. You're still doing something that is moving your learning forward, which is what I wanted for them. I knew that if they couldn't handle being part of this lesson right now, that they would join us again later, but they just needed a break, and I wanted them to be able to still do something where they were still learning and still like getting the information that they need. So
perfect. And I did notice you did, there were times where you did have to give behavior reminders. I like you guys use those repetitive cues to get their attention. You had the behavior chart. I guess my question is, and I noticed you were moving the clips. The clips you were moving, does the student know it's their clip, or how do they know it's their clip you're moving?
Their clips have their names on them, and so the girls who sit in the front that were having a harder time, they should know. They can see their names. DJ also knows very well which clip is his and where it moves, and so especially if I've had to ask them more than once and I just silently walk over, because it takes too much time to say, okay, you need to go move your clip, or I'm moving your clip for this reason. I just simply walk over, move their clip, and then later once I'm done doing whole group, I will go and talk to them and say, this is why your clip got moved, but we can always move back to green, or we know how to get it. I just need to see you making better choices.
And I think students know once you go over there and you start moving clips,
they
pay attention. I know you guys are strategic about how you set the learning environment where students, some specific students were seated in specific areas to kind of help with that classroom management, which is good. Let's see. All right. So when it comes, and I know this is the hard part right now because you have to wear a mask and being heard. So I thought you really did a good job projecting your voice, because I could hear you and understand you. I know when there were certain times you thought it was important, you would pull down your mask just to make sure.
I try, and especially if I have my mask down, I try to stay as close to the whiteboard as I can, because I know that's the proper distance.
Right.
And then, because it's just so hard for them to hear the words properly, and they can't see my mouth.
Yes.
And so I think it's easier, like, if they can see my mouth, it's like they can hear it better, and so they can. But then when I'm walking around, I do pull it back up and make sure that if I'm on their level, it's back.
And I know there's some masks for speech teachers that are clear.
We've tried those and when you talk in them, they just fog up.
Oh, and that makes sense.
It's not really helpful, as much as like a great idea it is. But
so I thought your oral communication skills were good. My suggestion would to be write a little bit larger. You were writing big when you had the prediction chart, but the other chart,
I think it was too
harder.
Small. Yeah.
It was too hard, and so you always want to write so that the person in the very back of the classroom can see. And so I like the idea chart paper. And I think too the way it was underneath
the TV.
Yeah. And so maybe just write larger. If you have a matching chart that's on a worksheet, you could do something under the Elmo. And so, that would be to make sure you write large enough. You gave praise to students, but I'd like to see next time a little bit more specific praise.
Okay. That's something I'm trying to work on.
Yes, so they specifically know what they did or said that was right.
Okay.
And I also thought too, because it was really hard to hear the students talk, again, because they're all wearing masks. And so maybe during this time is maybe restating, because I noticed you walked up to them so you could hear better, is after they give it, make sure you restate or rephrase so that everybody can hear
We're trying to work with them on, if I'm at the very front of the room, and as long as you're facing forward, you can pull your mask down to say your question. you have to use your speaker voice. It's hard, especially with my friend Jace, who sits in the back. The tone of his voice is a whisper, that he does not get much louder, and so you have to be almost like right next to him to hear what he's saying to you, and sometimes it's still hard. And so we're trying to work with him, but he is one of my ones who has speech and processing its problems.
Oh, okay.
We're working on it, but him especially is a lot of I need to be like right there with him. So
yeah, I mean, definitely the mask, it makes everything challenging. And I thought, the whole big focus of the lesson was on asking, through the previewing and then after actually reading the story, asking a question and answering it. And of course, they're naturally going to do the simple right there kind of questions.
Right.
Of course, the one about Stella Loon, I thought that was really good because it doesn't say in the story.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like you said, how could what evidence do we have that it could be a girl? But I thought maybe some, it's always good to pre-plan and model for the students some higher level questions for the students. Because the right there kind of little ones are easy to do off the top of your head. But for higher level, I think it really takes, planning in advance and writing them is more helpful. They did, they were following along with the story. They liked the story. They were engaged. I did like, the turning talk. You did encourage the use of the word wall, going up to the chart. And I know we kind of started off, we talked about the science connections, but maybe expand a little bit more on it. And that, I think, might play into maybe some higher level questionings.
Okay.
Let's see. And so I do think you did some, not every lesson do you have to modify based on their misconceptions and so forth. Because I think you started out with the lesson with one direction or thought about the students, and then once they had shared that they had read the story before, then you kind of adapted it and knew they had already heard it before, and so you kind of adjusted in how you asked questions.
Well, I think I remember her telling me that when I was in the hospital a couple weeks ago that she had played it for them over the TV during like Erla time. And I think it had slipped my mind when I was doing this, and then when they told me again, I was like, oh yeah, I remember she told me that.
Well, it's good. So you kind of made adjustments, and so you knew from that point they knew more, and so you worked on pulling that out. I already said that. For the focus area 4 professional responsibilities, this, and of course I'll talk to your cooperating teacher, I'll talk to her more about this. But this, I know just from when we had our initial meeting, that you guys work together, you collaborate on those, school-home connections. I know you're collaborating on gathering assessment. We're into week 7.
Yes.
So I know that you're taking over more and more and more in the classroom.
At this point, my responsibilities are pretty much foundational every day, except today we swapped it. And I've been taking over math.
Perfect.
But today, like I said, because we switched, she did foundational and I did ELA, and then she'll probably do math.
Okay.
And then we have, I believe it's tier 2 math today, so I will work with our kids for tier 2 math.
Okay, perfect.
And then it's Erla time, so.
Yes, and so that really runs everything, all the assessments.
But we're pretty good about flipping our schedule. Like if I know the day before that I need to teach a certain lesson, we'll work through it and flip our schedule to know who needs to do what and stuff like that.
All right, perfect. And so, let's see what else. So these last couple areas, I rely more on your cooperating teacher to talk to me about this. So I think we're good there.
Okay.
Any questions that you have for me?
I don't think I have any on this. I have a couple on like my impact project, but other than that.
Okay, and we can talk about that.
But other than that, I think I'm pretty okay. Like I said, I think my one thing that I'm confident in is that I have connections with my kids, and like I know each one of them. I know how to, like, what each one needs and how to work with them, and I think that's the one thing that I know. Like, even if I'm not confident sometimes in like the lesson, I know I'm confident in being able to connect with my kids, and I think that's one of my strengths with doing this. And I don't know.
Perfect. I would say, you seem to have a good rapport connection with them already. You use their names. You know them.
Yeah.
You know when they might need to go. Yeah. And that's really the main thing is knowing your students and planning with that in mind.
Right.
All right. Perfect. Thank you.
Mhm.